Joining me today is host, writer, stand-up comedian Flobo Boyce, who hosts his own radio show called New Amsterdam. And he's here to talk about his media career, how he lost 150 pounds, and what is next for him. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always cool to talk with people who are in the media space, and you're a legend. You know what I mean, so this is actually a fun time for me.
No, I'm so excited to have you here. And, I have to say, I love your trailer. It says, "Who are you and what do you do?"
Yeah,
You are a Renaissance man.
thank you.
Yeah, you do it all and you do it with such passion. I mean, I look at your interviews and the trailers on I'm talking about it and you're passionate about what you do. So is did becoming a comedian, was that the first career that came first?
Oh, that is a really complex question because that was the first dream. I grew up. My parents are working class, and so they had like six jobs between them, and so they're always serious and stern. They were like very like stoic and stern parents. You know what I mean? And I love them to death, but that's just where they are. But I would know as a kid, the only time they laughed was when it was late night talk shows like the Jay Leno's and the Lettermans, and I was like, I want to do that. So comedy was like the first dream. I wanted to have my own late night talk show. I couldn't sing, I couldn't dance, I couldn't juggle. I figured let me try the comedy thing. But I would say I was a writer first. I went to film
Mm.
school. I was an editor, but that's kind of like writing with pictures at the end of a movie. But then I got the passion of writing thereafter. And it was only after a near death experience I had when I was 29 where I was like, I got to try stand up before I kick the bucket because you never know when you're going to kick the bucket. You think you're going to be old and gray and around loved ones in a bed, but you can get hit by a bus tomorrow. Let me try that out. So it was like writing was the first action, comedy was the first dream, and they all kind of converged.
But you have a strong writing background, and that certainly helps with comedy, with your radio show, with writing in general. And so writing is really important if you have the writing bug or you're an accomplished writer like yourself. And so I think it's wonderful in comedian. I mean, not everyone can be a stand-up comedian, and I mean, but tell me when that pivotal moment came to you. Well, I want to be a stand-up comedy or comedian, in other words.
Yeah, so that's something I always thought about someday, someday, someday. Like that, there's always a dream everyone has. Like, oh man, when I turn 22, or when I get the right job, or when I have the right money. And I'm jumping ahead here, but I had lost a bunch of weight and I had excess skin. And so I had to get the skin removed, and this is what's called a flirty amnioplasty, or a compound tummy tuck, to get rid of 7 pounds of skin in my chest area. So I have two scars, one that runs from my chest to my pubic line, and one that runs from hip to hip, like an inverse T. So I got that done, and about 6 or 7 days afterwards, a part of my suture line had reopened, and I started to bleed out on my couch, and I thought I was going to die. And I told a story a bunch of times on different shows, so forgive me for being so flippant about it. I was going to die, but I realized you freak out, like you're like, oh my gosh, the panic, the blood, and blood is a lot warmer than you think. It's a lot stickier than you think. It's like messier than you think. But then you get kind of like zen about it. You go, well, if I die, I had a good run. And I
Mhm.
realized I had two big regrets, and it was to learn how to ride a motorcycle and to try stand-up comedy. And if I were to die, then those were the only two things I would be like, oh man, I never got a chance to do. So my mom was there at the time. She gave me a wet compress because I couldn't be moved. Right, I was bleeding out so much. You really couldn't call emergency services to move me. I would have like pretty much died on the way over there. So we basically compressed this giant gash that was 4 inches long and about an inch and a half wide. And the next day, I woke up and I survived. So it like the blood had clotted into and plugged the hole, and I had survived that scare. And I said, well, this is my second lease on life. And I took my first comedy class, and I got on stage 6 months after that. So it was an interesting thing where it was like, yeah, you keep thinking about someday. There may not be a someday. Go ahead and do it now.
Yes, I mean that. Wow. I mean, and what kept you calm though? Like, what was it like? I mean, I'm just saying, like, if you'd be, I know me, I'd be freaking out.
Yeah.
I don't know until you're in that situation, but how did you cope? Like being,
It, yeah, I understand now when people go into like moments of faith or moments of crisis, or they think about the ancestors or see the light. You do freak out when you think you're going to die. You kind of get like it's out of your hands, right? So you panic. You're like, oh, what do I do? I'm trying everything. This has never happened before. I'm calling my doctor. My doctor says you're on your own because he's a plastic surgeon and he's not an emergency care physician, and you can't call. So you're doing all things you can do in the real world, but then there's a moment where you just give up. Not give up, but you kind of go, well, if I die, it's a cool run. If I die, it's all right. I'm okay. A Zen thing that people who have hit rock bottom will tell you. Like it's like, hey man, take me now. I've done it. You know what I mean? And so the comments came from that. It was automatic, I guess. I couldn't tell you, there was no pro tip. There was no like, what you need to do is count from 1 to 3. It was just like everything was going to end there that night. So let me be okay with it, enjoy the last night I have. And we just put the things together, made me comfortable, and I survived the day after.
wow, and thank you for sharing. So from the stage to the road or to the track to the pavement, you started running, a marathon runner, right? Tell us, how did that come about?
Yeah, so taking a step back, I was always a heavy kid. I was the first grader that was 80 pounds. I don't know the Canadian measurements. I'm sorry. I should look this up. I'm the worst at that. I was always a big kid, and I became a bigger teenager and a bigger adult. By the time I was 22 years old, I was about 375 pounds, or about 26.9 stone. And so, for context, my pants were like size 56 waist. My shirt was 6 extra large, and so I was just heavy. I was resigned with being heavy, for what have you. But I took up running. Uh, as a way to take back the health situation, because one, it was free, right? I was a grad student. I didn't really have money for gym memberships, and I would save up money and get one personal training session, then like cancel the package, and steal tips and stuff like that. But I was in my early 20s, and I was living in Southern California at the time. And I hate to say it because we're a bit narcissistic on some level, but there was a fine young lass around my age who invited me out to Disneyland. And most times I say, if you're in your 20s and someone invites you to Disneyland, you go, okay, I'll get my goofy hat and my wallet. Let's go. I knew then that I had to think about how long could I stand on my feet? Were there going to be benches around? Could I fit in the rides? Could I fit in the turnstiles? And I was in my 20s. Like, movies and TV have told me this is my prime. I shouldn't be worrying about things like that. And I always say California saved my life because it's such an image conscious state. There are diet restaurants for every diet under the sun. And so I took things one day at a time. I lost the weight eating Subway sandwiches. I was on the Subway diet. I ate the Subway Club twice a day, 6 days a week. And then I would either go to the gym when I had the money, start jogging just to get the heart moving if I couldn't afford it. Or if I didn't feel like running, or if it was like a rainy day, I would go to the bowling alley, buy 4 games, and just bowl by myself all afternoon and get the heart rate up. And that first year, I lost 80 pounds, and overall lost 150 pounds, about 3 years from the day I started.
Mm, wow, that's an incredible. And what kept you, like, did you write it down like in a logbook or an app, like, to keep motivated? What was it that because there must have been some days that you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I want to go for a jog. I don't know if can you share some of the moments that, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, so I had what's called a slide belt. So it didn't have notches. It was one of those ones with two chain links, and you wrap it around. And so I got to see my wins doing that. Because if you have a lot of weight to lose, you don't notice it first, and it takes everyone else a long time to notice it, for a bunch of reasons. Everyone was dealing with their own stuff, or they didn't want to mention something. So I lost like 40 pounds before someone's like, "Hey, you know what?" So if you're looking for that kind of motivation, you're not going to get it. So I would look at my slide belt and look at the actual like progress. But there's times I get up and I don't want to run. There's times I get up and I didn't want to work out. And I said, and I forgive me because I know this is crass in some situations, but I go, prison inmates get an hour of exercise a day. And they're hardened criminals, right? Why am I denying myself that? I don't particularly enjoy brushing my teeth, but I have to do it multiple times a day because there's consequences if you do not. And so it was that motivation plus seeing the gains, as they say, of like that belt getting longer and longer is what got me to go day in, day out.
Mhm. And tell us about your training now. Like, mhm.
It's an evolution because I'm getting up there. No, I'm not getting like that, but like I'm not 20 years old anymore. I'm in my late 30s, and so you got to be more mindful of like range of motion and importing more rest. But I will say I run about 25 miles a week straight on the streets,
Yes.
which I now notice why people prefer treadmills because I can feel it now in my joints if my shoes are dead or if the street's too flat. And then I go to the gym every couple of days to alternately to do a weight training regimen is to keep the muscles strong, to keep that base going, and for fatigue's sake. And I just incorporated the rowing machine too, to make sure there's always something fresh in that routine. So I would say every day I do something, but I do alternate whether I do straight cardio on the street by street running or park running, going to the gym and doing indoor cardio, which I hate indoor cardio, but I'll do it, or hitting the rowing machine.
Well, as I said at the beginning, you're so passionate about what you do, everything like, and so that helps, and it also brings me to the other area for being in the media and starting your own podcast. And congratulations!
Oh, thank you.
I love the name, New Amsterdam. So tell our viewers and listeners, why did you call it that?
Yeah, it's actually a funny story. I actually mentioned this in my book, Graduation Day. So I'm from Brooklyn. I live in Los Angeles now, but I'm from Brooklyn. And New Amsterdam, NEW, is what the island of Manhattan was when it was sold to the Dutch. The legend goes $24 worth of like felt and beads and stuff. So I wanted to have a harking back to the town that raised me in New York. But the reason why it's KNEW, new, two reasons. One, SEO, copyrights, all that stuff. But more importantly, I wanted to have it a pursuit of knowledge as well. So I wanted to have that like idea that you could be an elevated person trying to discover new things. New Amsterdam as a brand started off as a stationery company with plans of expanding into leisure travel merchandise, suitcases, bags, that sort of thing. So if you're New Amsterdam affiliated, you were someone who were well traveled from that city theoretically. What happened was, like most things in business, that it failed. The idea is that, and I'm getting to the weeds here, but my marketing plan relied on taking income from my day job, and I got laid off from that day job, so I didn't really have any other investors. And I said, you know what? Let's try to find a way to resurrect this because I like the idea of this city for creatives and cities for doers and cities for travelers, but it's a fake city, but it feels like a real city. But what can I do that to push that back as far as an idea? And that's when the podcast launched. The first 39 episodes was me saying, hey, if you're creative, this article would be fun for you. Something I realized, what can this sport teach us about being a creative? And then when the lockdown happened, my high school buddy called me up, and I won't forget this. She called me up. She goes, I'm going to be your guest in your podcast next week. And I go, I don't have guests on my podcast. She's like, so? And that was it. I started having guests from episode 40 on because someone just gave me a challenge and said, I'm in it. And that's how it grew from there.
Yes, I mean, and like the guests that you have is varied, right? And so, people wanting to come on your show, they send you an email and you see if it's the right, if it aligns, right? But pretty much people have fitness and lifestyle, right, and etc.
Yeah, it's a fitness, lifestyle, entrepreneurs, and creatives. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I try to keep my umbrella open as far as fit is more important because the idea of the show was getting in that year two, year three, year 20 kind of thing. I felt too much content was either aspirational. Hey, if you think really hard, if you manifest, you could do it. Or it was the opposite, where someone's like, well, I get up and have 500 push-ups, eat raw eggs. You're not doing that. You're weak. But there's really nobody in the middle being like, yo, I did it, I got fired from my job, or I was doing it and I had to change my network, or I was doing it and I'm having trouble like pricing because I'm an immigrant or I'm a person of color, I'm a woman. How do I do that? And so that was what I thought was super important because like I said, the guests came from the pandemic, and all the guests on my show were considered non-essential. So imagine you dedicate your life to being, I don't know, a quilter, and the world just said you're non-essential. Stay home. So I wanted to know what was going through your mind psychologically because you're non-essential, but you are essential.
Yeah, so it's with podcasts, I mean, it's so valuable to get the message out and what you do, as I said, congratulations, but also you are a DJ, correct?
Yeah, that's my day job. That's my night and weekends job, but my day job.
Gosh, it's awesome.
Look,
So
following your dreams costs money.
yes, but when I think of a DJ, like it's such a skill. I mean, tell us, how did you fall in? How did you want to pursue a career as a
Yeah,
DJ?
it was the career part's funny because everything's connected. I was a hobbyist. Again, I'm from New York, where DJ culture is very, very important. But I was afraid of it because it was important. Because I've been to parties where the DJ was bad, they will boo you off stage, and the promoter wouldn't pay you. And I was like, forget it, I'm not doing it.
Mhm.
But as I was, hanging out, and I wanted to have time for myself because I was doing all the boyfriend girlfriend thing and the couple thing and the make money thing. I was DJing as a hobby. That job I was telling you about earlier, the one I got let go from that cut off my funding for New Amsterdam, they had called me Thanksgiving Day 2017 and said, well, they didn't call me. Accounts payable called me and said, we wanted to disperse your 401k. Which address did we write the check to? I'm like, why are you dispersing my 401k? Oh, sorry, sir. And then I got the call from my boss being like, hey, look, we got to let you go. So I guess somebody got overzealous on a holiday and they had to fire me on the phone because the accounts people wanted to give me my money. So it's November. It's November of 2017. No one hires anybody in December. This doesn't do that in marketing. I wasn't at a corporate job. It was marketing. And I go, well, November, December is kind of hot season for DJs. That's when we have engagement parties and people say, we're getting married next year. So that hobby became a business out of desperation overnight. My website was a writer's blog. I gutted the entire thing, relaunched it, didn't have any content. And I just said, hey, look, I've been a music lover for a long time. Trust me with the most important day of your life. And one person did. They did. It was in May, and I had 5 months to say yes, get all the gear, practice all the gear, get the wedding down. And that's what they say as an entrepreneur about saying yes or building the parachute on the way down. Because if I said no, if I said I don't think I'm ready, I would be out in the street. So it wasn't like I wanted to be a DJ, but I fell into it, and so far it's been pretty well for me.
And yeah, so it's wonderful. Wow. I mean, you just keep going and going. Which leads to me, what is next for you? What can you share some of your projects?
I wish I knew that. It's a crazy time because I kind of leaned into the podcasting heavy during the pandemic. It's his little like roadmap. So I'll DJ in the weekends. I would do all the client stuff during the week. I would do podcasts for wrestling. I got signed by Spotify to be a wrestling podcaster for them for a year and 3 months. And when that ended, because there's no kind of entertainment but corporate entertainment, where it doesn't matter how good the show is, it just matters if you meet a bottom line. I kind of said, all right, well, that was over. Let me go back and cover something I love, which was baseball. I'm a big baseball guy, and I love the New York Mets, and my dad and I bond about that. So I became writing for sport, and then I kind of linked up with the whole baseball journalism kind of angle, and I have my own blog doing that. I got flown out to cover Baseball United in the Middle East last season, and now I'm actually a podcaster for Mets Digest online. So it sounds different, it sounds disparate, but at the end of the day, I get to be myself and present something I love to people, and that's pretty much been the through line.
That is awesome. And is there
But you
any
too. I mean, you do that also. Yeah, like come on, run with it.
run with it? Yes, we're running with it. But is there anything else you'd like to add? Like if you want to be a guest, as I was saying, or want to reach out to you, where can they go?
Yeah, absolutely. NewAmsterdam.com, KNEW The show airs every Thursday on all your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube as well. But just hit me up. You actually can say this now. After 15 years, you can just Google my name and my face comes up. It's so weird. Take that, Flowbots. Yeah, you put my name in the Google machine, it comes up, my contact information comes up. Just say hello and we'll get to have a conversation.
Thank you so much for being a guest today, and I'd like you to come back.
Absolutely.
Thank you.